solidarity with Syria. I think there's a huge amount that can be done actually, and I want to try and cover some of it and actually have a good discussion on it, because I think this has been a thing where the left has huge potential but hasn't really tapped into it, and I don't think it's too late to do that. And actually, I think there's a lot of ways that both supporting Syria can also help us, like with also take on like domestic issues like the prevent agenda in schools and supporting refugees and challenging the narratives around Daesh and Islamophobia and things. It's actually quite an integral component of those. So I think one of the main things is obviously massive humanitarian crisis. So humanitarian aid is got to be a key thing, and it's actually quite, it's not complicated to organise. These are relief organisations set up by Syrians in Britain, which they're all kind of grassroots organisations set up by individuals and families and people to get aid into Syria or to refugee camps. Hand in Hand for Syria, it's kind of more kind of secular, but started off doing medical aid, but then when the regime started to put in starvation sieges and things like that, they moved to kind of food, to getting food to people and things like that, because actually they realised, well, food is medicine when you're starving, and you need to get that. And what they pioneered, and which I organised a few times, was they did what was called a big aid drop, where they'd get people to organise aid collections around the country and then ship them to the centre, load them into containers and ship them out to Syria. It was a very grassroots thing. You could just take over an office, do it at work. I ran a collection point out of a trade union office in South London. We just leafleted around Brixton, messaged all the members of Lambeth Unison, and we collected a couple of carloads of aid, which we then shipped off to. We then gave to Hand in Hand, who shipped it off to Syria. And it's a way of kind of it's a way of getting unions to take it up and do it. It's quite, it's not hard. I've done it in my hospital as well, where I got a letter from Hand in Hand saying that they would support us doing an aid collection. They passed it to hospital management. They said it was fine to send out to all the staff to say there's an aid collection going on, and people came and donated aid in hospital, and we collected it and gave it to Hand in Hand. And it was a small thing at first, but now I've got 4 or 5 people around me who are interested in doing more of this, and we're going to do another aid collection thing. So it's a way of kind of also getting politics into the union and the issue of Syria and the issue of relief, and also politicising it and things. So and also, I mean, all of these organisations will accept donations, and you can do whip rounds at work or organise fundraisers and things like that. And they'll send speakers to talk about the humanitarian crisis as well, and invite them to union branches. The Syrian British Medical Society was set up as a kind of a group just for Syrian doctors in the NHS in 2007, but with the revolution it took on a more political role of actually organising medical aid. They're also they coordinate the medical relief work for Syria Relief. Actually, they're in partnership, and they run. I think they help run a couple dozen hospitals in the inside Syria or on the border with Turkey, and they get sort of funding. Some of it's self-funded, some of it's donations, some of it's from EU or government money, and they're also able to come and give talks about what's the situation there. I invited a doctor from Syrian British Medical Society to address the regional committee of Unite Health in London, and then now we're trying to get him invited to the regional committee for all the unions across unions in Unite in London. To sort of talk about the issue of Syria humanitarian aid. So it's kind of getting the issue into the unions and getting them to mobilise their resources behind this, and start a discussion about what is happening in Syria, and cut through some of that, the Islamophobic stuff and the narrative around Daesh. I mean, Daesh doesn't have an air force. The people bombing the hospitals is Russia. It's the regime. You can start discussing these issues quite frankly. Civil society. Now, I mean, I didn't realise the kind of I was operating with the traditional definition of Syrian civil society. I didn't realise how all-encompassing Layla and other Syrians really meant it. So I kind of divided up the kind of grassroots organisations and the councils, but really they kind of all go together under this banner. But these are just some of the most well-known civil society groups in Syria. There are, as people have mentioned, there's actually hundreds across the country, and many more you can engage with. But these ones are kind of are good ones to start with, and then if you want to find others, you can find them on the internet. The Syrian civil defence are also known as the White Helmets, the people who go in and rescue people from the bombs. They actually already have a link with the FBU, who've been donating material and money to them and stuff like that. So there's kind of already some unions already involved. I think the TUC might support them as well, and they certainly have some support from parts of the International Trade Union Congress. So people have already kind of made those links there, but I think you can definitely try and support them. And again, they're a non-violent, non-sectarian, humanitarian group which rescues everyone. They rescue opposition fighters, they rescue regime shoulders. They also rescue and run public services where they've been abandoned by the Assad regime. So they're quite good to support and raise money for. And the White Helmets is kind of the kind of international political campaign in support of them, which people can get behind. They produce nice videos, graphics about them, and again it just cuts through this narrative of it's only Assad or Daesh. There's and I think some things capture some of the complexity of Syria in that a friend of mine is doing work with refugees in Syria, and he works with some of the fighters who come between Lebanon and Syria, and he's like, they'll sort of fight for 3 or 6 months and then go in Lebanon and work as day labourers and see their families in the refugee camps and go back and fight. And this guy had previously been an al-Nusra fighter, and then he came to Lebanon and spent some time there, and he went back and he went and became a White Helmet in Idlib. So the kind of this whole jihadist thing it's much more complex than that. There's a practicality behind what people are doing. Like, who's got the money? Well, I can go and fight with these people because they've got the money and the guns. And then actually, I want to break from that. So actually, I'll go and be part of a non-sectarian, rescue force for which helps everybody. This is the complexity of the situation on the ground, and some of the pragmatism that informs people's decisions. The Syrian non-violence movement was set up. It kind of emerged out of the revolutionary movement as a sort of alternative to the armed struggle, but obviously with the repression, a lot of its members have gone into either humanitarian work, or some of them have become refugees and are overseas here. I think there was actually a double page spread in the Evening Standard this week by Reem Asil, who was a Syrian doctoral researcher, and she was part of the Syrian non-violence movement. She's now working in a lab in Oxford or something. So these people are here. They're here, and we can make contact with them and work with them. And they are, they're very good politically. And they're the democratic revolutionary activists who we want to be making links with. Kesh Malek is a kind of grassroots revolutionary movement from Aleppo. They coordinate sort of. What they've done, they started off as a kind of a protest group, but then they moved into running services when they realised that actually the revolution's not going to be won in a year or two, and actually we need to be providing services for our people. So they run 8 or 9 schools in the Aleppo area, and they have a commitment to a sort of non-Islamic, non-sectarian education system, and they run these schools and on that basis. And what we're doing with them is we're trying to develop a twinning campaign between their schools in Syria and schools in Britain. They've successfully twinned a school with one in the Netherlands, and we want to roll that out here as a way of raising awareness and also getting them some sort of funds and some support. So it's like they'll get the examples from the school in the Netherlands is they do aid collections or collect money, give it to the school to help fund them. Or they'd also do letter writing, so the kids in the Netherlands would write to the kids in Syria and vice versa to help them become aware of a world beyond the wall, because it's very important. Like Leila said, people growing up in Syria now, they've only known fighting and they've only known a world of enemies. So actually, it's very important to say there's people outside there who care about you and support you and want you to be safe, and that's a crucial part of stopping the extremist radicalism that is growing because of the sectarian violence of the regime. Bidayat is a sort of a documentary making group which they make short documentaries and films about the Syrian Revolution. They have a very good YouTube page. They put out films and documentaries quite regularly. One of the most recent ones was about love in besieged towns in southern Damascus, and it's all very well produced. It's got subtitles. It's very good things to show to give people an eye when you see what's happening on the ground in Syria. And a lot of their films are also available to to show if you contact them and ask, because they made some feature films as well. Planet Syria is a international lobby group for Syrian civil society groups. They're one of the main pushers behind the no-fly zone demand, no-fly zone, no bombing zone. But they're also campaigning for peace talks and a political settlement to the fighting. And they emerged out of an attempt to create a united kind of international body to reflect what civil society in Syria wanted on the international stage. Finally, Watanali is a grassroots kind of art therapy, fun kind of children's group for supporting children, which is actually started by a SOAS student who, again they raise money which is then used to fund art therapy and days out for refugee kids in Turkey, and these and they'll hire a hall and take kids there for the day so they can paint and they can have a bit of a childhood amongst all the the devastation and everything, and they've made some good little documentaries about the kids talking about their experiences. Some of them it's pretty heavy when you've got 5 or 6 year olds just reading off all the relatives who have been killed or missing in the war and everything, but also that you get to see them actually having fun and enjoying themselves, and the organisers they are the people who run this in Turkey. They're the revolutionary activists who've had to flee and stuff. So it's very much, they see us as a continuation of the revolution, keeping people's spirits up, keeping people, helping them deal with the effects of the war and keeping them supported, and so they don't get sucked into armed violence or other more the extremist groups. The local councils. These are just some of the local logos of the local councils in liberated Syria. So these are the bodies which have taken over running local services around Syria. And these are, it really frustrates me when people are kind of like, oh, we don't know who the good guys are in Syria, we don't know where they are. Like, all of these are each of these groups has a Facebook page, right? You can look them up, and they actually use this to communicate with their constituents. Like the local council of Aleppo publishes minutes of its meetings, it publishes its accounts on there, so that it's kind of accountable to the public. And these are the bodies which are running schools, running humanitarian aid, organising the public services. Like I think Lila mentioned, when their local council of Aleppo is currently preparing for the threat of the siege there, and these are the grassroots democratic bodies that we need to talk about. They're the future of Syria. If Syria is going to have a future, it is these organisations, and they, like I said, they're quite easily accessible via Facebook, they. I'm not quite sure actually how you'd go about necessarily engaging them, but they're a topic that can be talked about, and to actually this is part of a wider discussion actually of how we engage them, how we support them. Actually, some of them are being used by international aid agencies because they are reliable, accountable bodies on the ground who can, if they give them money, they know it's going to go to local services. It's not going to get sucked into the armed groups and other things like that. So there's about possibly 400 local councils across Syria. Some of them are democratically elected, some of them are I think a bit more technocratic, selected from kind of local elites, but they are answerable to the local population, responsive to them and running, services there, and that's something that should be celebrated and talked about. Even in the midst of this terrible, terrible war, people are self-organising and building these organisations. Just which one? In the top right corner, the local council of Daria. People need to talk more about Daria. It is a suburb south of Damascus, a town of about 200,000 people, which had a really strong revolutionary movement. And it was then subject to a brutal siege by the Assad regime. It's been going on 4 years. There's only about 12,000 people left there. But they have a democratic local council. The armed brigade in Daria is subordinate to the council. It is not independent. It functions like the council decides what it does. And they have resisted, on the outskirts of Damascus, they have resisted the Assad regime army for 4 years with no support. They've had no aid for 4 years, but they've held out. This is amazing. And no one is talking about this seriously on the left. And and certainly things are hard, but they have managed to, they've avoided some of the worst effects of the starvation, which has affected places like Madaya and others, because they took steps to sort of collectivise food production. The council took over the running of it and made sure it's equally distributed, so it's not like subject to like market or war profiteering, and all these things are going on, right on the outskirts of Damascus. And this is why actually, the democratic movement, the local councils, they are the biggest threat to the Assad regime, because they are offering a future of a democratic Syria right there, almost in the capital. And that's why, Daria was subject to 800 barrel bombs a month, every month from October to January, almost to the beginning of the ceasefire, because they're trying to destroy it. And people are still holding out there, and it's this kind of heroism and resilience that needs to be the focus of what the left's talking about on Syria. Finally, the political solidarity. I was going to run through, from the work I've done with Syrian activists for the last 2 years, I think one of the main things I want is advocacy and awareness. They want people to know about the revolution, that it's still continuing, what's going on. Humanitarian aid, money, that's kind of secondary to them. The Kesh Malek, Marcel Shawara, who's a Christian from Aleppo who runs Kesh Malek, she spoke at the aid conference in February, and she came and gave a talk here, and the point was she was like, look, if you don't stop the bombs, all amount of aid doesn't mean anything. They're going to send the money in and they're going to bomb the money, and they're going to send more money in and they're going to bomb the money. Like, they want the bombing to stop, and they want people to challenge the narrative about it's only ISIS and Assad. So a main demand is civilian protection. This comes through in the slogan, stop the bombs or the no-fly zone. Humanitarian aid into besieged areas to break the sieges and stop the starvation, and the release of the detainees. Those are like the core demands of the opposition and civil society. I do think the left has to engage with them. You don't have to agree with things like the no-fly zone, but you have to then come up with creative alternatives, ways of implementing these things which mean you can relate to people. And that's why it's frustrating when people say, oh, we have to oppose the no-fly zone. You shouldn't oppose it, because then it puts you right in opposition to what Syrians are asking for. You have to find a way to relate to it and say, look, I don't agree with the no bombing zone, but say, can we support the ceasefire? Can we demand humanitarian aid? Can we demand the release of detainees? Like, those are entirely supportable, and Syrians would love it if the left came out and spoke loudly and strongly for those things, even if they disagree with the no-fly zone and things like that. So I think that's the graphic there is just one of the placards that we made for the anniversary march. That's what we were sort of taking on there, and we've got loads more on our website, Syria Solidarity, and things like that, where we try and took these demands from the opposition stuff and put them into into slogans that people could agree with. So that's kind of it. I think there's a hell of a lot that can be done for Syria and for Syrians, and I'm just open up to discussion and questions now.